Hello and welcome to Audible River. I'm Alan Rice, and I am very happy to have with me Susan Lyons, who is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, a Reiki Master, Board Certified Regression Therapist, and she teaches hypnotherapy at HCH Institute. Hi, Susan. It's great to see you.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I want to start right away. I want to ask you, what is regression therapy?
Okay. Well, regression therapy is going back to, in general, anything in the past. So that could be regressing back to childhood. It could be regressing back to pre-birth experiences, or it could be regressing back to a previous lifetime.
A previous lifetime. Now, not everybody believes in previous lifetimes. How does that turn up though? As something that could affect? As a therapeutic tool, how does that? Can you tell me more about that? I guess.
Yeah. So past life regression, which is my passion, um, so sometimes in life, let's say we've got a physical ailment and we go to the doctor and nobody can figure it out. And it's like, where is this coming from? And it doesn't make sense. Maybe it makes a little sense that maybe some of the things could come from childhood, or like a fear or a phobia, even. But it seems like it's got a highly charged feeling about it that's unexplained. And so we can go further back and to see where this energy comes from, and to note one does not have to believe in reincarnation for this therapy to be highly effective.
Okay, so obviously now you've worked with people who don't believe in reincarnation. I take it then, right? And so you've go ahead, talk about that.
Yeah, I would say that most of the people that seek me out for past life regression do have an open mind and somewhat of a belief in reincarnation. But sometimes people will come for other hypnotherapy to work around another kind of a problem. And once we start doing work together, and it seems like it goes deeper, I might suggest that we try visiting a past life. And I'll give you an example. I had one person, for example, a client many years ago, say, well, I'm not really sure. I believe in reincarnation, but hey, I'm willing to give it a try if you think it might help. And when this person came back from the experience, they were literally blown away because all of the pieces came together.
Wow. Now, without revealing too much about anybody's particular therapy, can you give me a little bit of example of how that works? What kind of things people remember? What sort of things it resolves?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, there's many topics, and I always love to go into a past life regression with a nice tight intention. So let's say it's a physical ailment or an injury. Okay.
Okay.
So let's say somebody's got a chronic hip pain, but the doctors can't explain where this is coming from. Let's say somebody has a fear or a phobia of spiders or snakes. No idea where this came from. Let's say a person has a relationship dynamic with somebody that is either really hot or really cold. So they really, really are attracted to each other or really repulsed by each other, and it's creating problems in their life. This could also go back to a past life. Gosh, there's many more topics. Oh gosh, even really interesting stuff like a non-human incarnation.
You mean people remember non? What do you mean by non-human to begin with?
Yeah, so it could be I actually had somebody regress back to being a blade of grass spontaneously.
Okay, so something I want to say is that when you say that you don't have to believe in reincarnation, and frankly, so I'm sort of on the fence with that and thinking that, well, maybe there could be other explanations for these memories, and not to take anything away from the importance of what it is in a person's psyche, but it's definitely, you're saying that there's definitely something there that's buried that feels like a past experience, that it's somehow stored in a person's mind and their how did is it even does it even matter to talk about how that works or where this memory how do we if it's not from this life, how are we carrying it with us?
That's a really, really great question. And one thing I will say is, let's pretend this is what I tell clients when they say, what if I'm just making this all up? That's a very common question.
Good one.
And my answer to that question is, if we are just telling ourselves a story, it's a way for our subconscious mind to find a way to heal itself. So in the end, as long as some kind of a healing or a shift in the energy happens, do we even have to say more?
Right.
But to add to that, there has been documented proof of some of the historical facts, names, places. This has been written about. Dr. Ian Stevenson has done quite a bit of work around this, and he wrote a book called Children's Past Lives. And these recalling of these events from like a 4-year-old child when the internet wasn't around. Like, how does this happen? And so, how do we explain where that's coming from? Is it coming from the person? Is it something we picked up in the collective consciousness? But again, at the end of the day, if a healing happens, what does it matter? But I've done probably thousands of these at this point, and I've never not believed what was coming out of the client's mouth because they have an emotional response, and we don't make that up.
Right. So, no matter what you're saying is that no matter if this is from a past life or if you've somehow collected this from the collective unconscious or conscious or whatever, or if your unconscious has created a story to symbolize some hurt that you have no other way of getting in touch with, that all of this is a valid way of looking at it, and all of this gets addressed in this type of therapy. What is what you're saying?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. So okay. So, but you're saying that in the therapy, when people are able to like retrieve this memory, what is happening? I mean, why does the relief happen? I mean, you're talking about there's physical pain or there's relationship issues or whatever, but why does remembering it help?
I believe it helps because it now brings it into the conscious mind and we can shift the energy.
Uh,
Um, let's see. How else can I explain this a little bit better? Also, when we are in a past life regression, two of the most important parts of this are the death experience and then what happens after death, which is called the in between. And in this part, we bring in a higher perspective, the perspective of our higher self, our soul essence, to look at the story and to put it into a perspective where and then we can ask, what healing do we need to do around this to create the shift? So sometimes it's just a little nudge or a shift in the energy that will really just kind of shake things out. And then also, like if we're playing out a reoccurring pattern in this lifetime that came from the past, when we realize, wait a minute, I already did that. I already had the life where I lived in poverty. I don't need to do that again. I don't need to be stuck here in this place, in this scarcity mentality.
so it's like it's a embedded pattern that what you're talking about, and that it gives someone sort of a higher view, a latitude of vision. Let's say to say, well, I've had that experience, I can let that go. So it's a letting go. I'm getting now that you're able to experience when you come in touch with these memories. So does anybody come to you with they say I mean like they already remember something and they want to know more, or they want to like find what is this thing that keeps popping in my head? Does that happen?
Yeah, it could be through a dream. It could be again through a relationship dynamic that just feels like this feels really old and very deep. It could be, there's lots of spontaneous ways these things come up. Also, even doing any kind of body work, acupuncture, massage, these things, these memories are also start to come to the surface and start to unfold. And I believe part of the reason is that when we start working on ourselves, it is our higher selves way of kind of sending a message. Please investigate this. Please look into this as part of your evolution as a soul to remembering who you are.
So talk a little bit about the higher self. How would you describe that?
Yeah, the wise and creative part of us. all knowing, loving, compassionate, and non judgmental.
So everybody has this?
Yes.
And so, right, okay, well, yeah, hopefully, but so these getting in touch with these memories, you're saying that it can have the effect of giving us a view from our higher self, because at some point, maybe in this progression, we, like you talked about the in between times, we are like more in tune or closer to our higher self experience. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I actually believe that in between, we actually become our higher self. And one other note about this, the other thing with looking at the higher perspective, we can then, from looking with the higher perspective, reframe the experience and what can I learn from having had this experience, and how does it actually help me? Because I firmly believe that we actually choose our lives and we actually plan it out ahead of time before we incarnate.
There's a lot of similar descriptions of those kind of decisions made before we're born from all sorts of traditions, and not necessarily from a reincarnation standpoint. That this is kind of common in some mystical traditions and ancient stories, that they just say that there's some thing that you go through, or some being you have to make promises to, or that we all have this idea of what we're coming here for, right? But this isn't something that I think in our Western modern culture, that's saying that we come in here with our own purpose is something that, I'm going to go on a stretch here, that Christianity has kind of like pushed out of the conversation, because in Christian, I mean, we're mostly a Judeo-Christian. In that kind of thought, God decides everything, right? So it's what God's will. Now, I personally believe that everything that we do and happens is sort of a blend of, what God, universe, or whatever wants for us, and then we're choosing, out of whatever's offered. So the idea that we are making decisions, that we're planning our life as creating our own life here, that's kind of a big deal, a big thing to absorb, I think. So, do you have clients that get in touch with that for the first time, and what their reactions might be? You can talk about that.
Absolutely. And I will say, I'll preface by saying, for people that are having very difficult lifetimes with a lot of trauma, it's a really hard pill to swallow. I planned this. Why would I have chosen this for myself? And so in the in between, where we bring in the healing and the perspective of, oh my goodness, there's something really important that can be learned from this experience. How can I take this, we could call it a trauma or a tragedy, and turn it into a gift from where I have learned to grow from that space? And so, for example, like, let's say you have a really tough childhood, and then you come to a point in your life and you look back and you go, I see why all of those things happen, because it's now made me the compassionate, empathetic person who I am today, that's able to have this, whatever contribution to humanity, or whatever it is that our purpose is here. Oftentimes, when we look back, we can see kind of that, why it happened, but we have to, I think, come from a place of a little bit of personal responsibility in the choice
Yeah.
to come to
Right.
that place. Yeah.
Right. Um, Also, too, my thoughts about that are that this world. You can say what you want about it, but it certainly gives you a lot of opportunity to face challenges and test yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that when you're, I mean, me, I'm speaking personally. When I'm in this life, I'm going like, why would I ever choose this? But like you're saying, that I feel like that, outside of, well, let's call it this realm of existence. I mean, there's, again, other traditions that talk about this very thing, like in, the God realm or whatever, or like these other, higher realms or whatever. You don't get challenged in those places. Everything's kind of nice and goes easy. And if you want to work on something, or you want to develop certain skills, you may not be able to get that experience in those places. So you
Yes.
come to something like this. That's an idea. Anyway.
Yeah. And this, they say this is of all of the schools, this Earth school is the toughest one.
Well,
It's
there you
very, it's very dense, and there's a lot of contrast here, say
go.
the
There,
least.
welcome to the toughest school, right? So I want to ask you though, how did you start doing this? How did this come into your life? This interest in past lives and regression therapy?
Yeah, it's such an interesting story, actually. My grandfather was a hypnotherapist and a past life regressionist in starting in and also a psychologist in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And he definitely believed in hypnotherapy as a therapeutic model. He wasn't so sure he believed in reincarnation. He kind of thought it was nonsense and past lives were nonsense, but he started doing it as experimentally to see what happened. And it actually began to a rebuttal to the Bridey Murphy case, which was a famous past life case.
Hmm.
Um, but he actually stated, this was his stated statement, that I've regressed people. As I started to regress people, a pattern began to appear. They talked of leaving their bodies the same way and being born the same, reborn the same way. So he became thoroughly convinced, and he actually found factual evidence and proof of some of his cases that it's actually been written about. Anyway, so he was a very fascinating man. And when he passed away, my family asked if I wanted anything of his. And I said, and this, I was in my 20s. And I said, I want all of his hypnotherapy material, not knowing or having any idea that I would one day be doing this. And so, fast forward about 15 years later, after that, I was sitting on my back porch and I just literally was talking to my guides, saying, I know I'm meant to be doing something else and something more important. Please help me figure out what that is. And I swear, in my mind's eye, the words hypnotherapy appeared to me. And I went and I got that box of his stuff and I started looking through it. And I just was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I sought out schools and I found HCH Institute, which is where I did my studies. Um, and then lastly, just what's very interesting is after I did my studies at HCH Institute and was doing my internship there, I was talking to my mom, and she was living with my grandparents while my father was in Vietnam, and she was pregnant with me. And come to find out, and I couldn't believe I was just hearing this story. Um, she was being hypnotized by my grandfather for anxiety, and she was actually sitting in and witnessing some of the past life regressions that he was executing. So I was witnessing this from the womb.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So obviously there is some deep connection there for you that you revisit. So let me see if I got this timeline correct. First of all, what's your grandfather's name?
Dr. Kenneth Marcus Lyons.
Okay. And so he left his, you called it material. So what was the material, if I might ask? Or his records, case studies, and that sort of thing?
Some case studies, typed out notes, tons of magazine, I'm not rather newspaper articles, some featuring him where he was at these speaking engagements, a ton of Edgar Casey material.
Okay.
I don't know if you know who Edgar Casey is.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I grew up in Virginia near where the Edgar Casey Institute is, right? So,
A ton of that, and also the book called Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation that has some of his case studies where he had proven some facts, and that was published in 1965. Yeah, and just a ton of books and material on past life regression and psychic phenomenon, etc.
it's interesting. Well, obviously, he came in with more of a scientific view, a skeptic on this whole past life thing. But I took note of what you said, that he saw a pattern, that people were describing similar experiences in these memories, and that got his attention.
Yes.
Wow. So let me ask you something else about this. So if there is, I guess I'm trying to link this to progression of, I mean, a personal evolution. You know how a person, like if you have a memory like a past life memory, like you were maybe you were ignorant of certain things, or you did something that you felt like you needed to atone for. I mean, these are the kind of things people talk about with past lives. But what other things is there a progression from life to life that you would see that people are, I'm learning this and now I need to add that, and how does that appear in a person's soul growth? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And I believe this is one of the reasons why this is important to look at, because when we are stuck in a pattern and we don't resolve that, in my view, we carry that into a next life. We put another layer on it.
Oh, we keep doing that.
Yes. So let's say we clear that thing and we have this realization, oh my gosh, I had this experience. What did I learn from it? I can now move on from this. Then guess what? The next lesson in the progression for the soul is going to show up. We don't want to be stuck in a repeating cycle of something. We want to move forward, right? We want to let that go. And like the statement, oh, I never want to be, I don't want to see this man again in my next life because he was, my husband was such a pain in the butt or something like that. And it's like, oh my God, that statement right there is like, obviously you haven't let something go. And so guess what? Guess who's going to show up to kind of give you that lesson again?
Right, right. Yeah, you
Yeah.
kind of like put a tag in that you're going to be revisiting it.
And it
It's,
may not even be the same person, but it might be a similar type of relationship.
yes.
Right.
Now you were saying with your in this therapy, I mean, not only past life regression, but the memories maybe from our childhood, those things. So in this life, so we can have, so it's possible to have important events that we've forgotten about.
Yes.
Is this a common thing?
It's
Well,
common that when we have traumatic experiences that it will get buried. Our subconscious will bury this because we don't, I mean, we need to live our daily life, right? But it is under there gathering some kind of energy until we are brave enough to really look at this. So, oftentimes you may have somebody coming to you, let's say a simple thing like anxiety, and in the course of working with this person, you realize there's many years where they just don't have any memories of their childhood. There's a reason for us to not remember that. And so we take the baby steps along with the client when they're ready to look at these things so they can, live their life to the fullest potential. That's what this is all about.
so what you're saying is that kind of hidden memories that we would have from this lifetime, is often connected to trauma, and so it's something that we would approach carefully, I guess, is what you're saying, right? And obviously, you would offer a very safe and structured space to revisit these memories and to do any work it would take to heal from whatever patterns got embedded. That's what you're talking about.
Yes. And I will say that higher self, which I wouldn't use that term with somebody who doesn't believe, maybe who is not spiritual, let's say. I would just use wise and creative. But I do believe that our higher self will guide us and take us there when we're ready,
Okay.
has the wisdom to not be like, oh, maybe we're not going to be poking around right here, right now, because the client is not ready. We don't want to fracture their personality, right?
Right. No, no, we don't. I have another question about the higher self, and that is, do you have any suggestions how a person can get in touch with their higher self? How does a person know when their higher self is communicating? Can you go into that state at will? Yeah. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I actually think it's one of the most important first things that we will do with a client, and we call it resourcing. Whether that be a guide, an angel, their higher self, or just the wise and creative part of them. But at the very beginning, usually when we start working with a client, when I start working with a client, if they're spiritually oriented, I want to introduce them to their guides and their higher self. And so we can do that through hypnotherapy. People can do this simply through meditation. There's higher self meditations out there. Eventually, when we trust our inner knowing, we can do this at will. And some people it's more of a feeling. Some people might have like more of an auditory or a visual experience. We can bring in all these different, we call it the avocado, everything we see, hear, feel, smell, touch, taste.
Yeah,
Picture of this. Yeah.
right. So now, the higher self, is there like, okay, like some people have like, like different voices or whatever, or like things in their mind, or say, oh, they might be criticizing them, or they might say like, oh, you're, whatever, you're not smart enough to do this, or you're not whatever to do. So, but those aren't, I mean, I'm just trying to say, what kind of things would the higher self be saying to you so that you can recognize, oh, I think that's my higher self and not whatever this other thing was.
You are perfect just as you are. You are a beautiful child of God. You have an important purpose and reason for choosing to be on the planet at this time. Loving, comforting. It's a very different language than what you were talking about, the inner critic, which is part of the ego state. Okay.
Okay. So the higher self, it, what we're talking about is a real thing, and it's inside all of us, and it kind of goes to yeah. There's a lot of different traditions that talk about this in different ways. That talk about the there's the inner light, or the the God within, or these kind of things. But I feel like that it all points to exactly what you're talking about. But it's part of us. It's like our own. Oh, yeah. So here we go. Your website is called
Yes.
discoveryourtrueself.com. But yes, so now are we talking about your true self when we talk about the higher self?
Yes. It's our
Okay.
soul essence, the part of us that knows everything about us, the part of us that created this plan, that's manifesting and creating our world around us that we're living in. And I believe we all are here for a specific purpose. And part of that is to remember who we are before we put this mask on that we wear in the material. Yeah.
Right. So we've it's sort of like when you said mask, it's almost like we are actors that entered a stage. And so at some point do we remember that we're acting, and that we decided on entering a play? That's what you're talking about?
Yes, yes, very good metaphor. Exactly right. Yes, we are all actors and we're all creating our own reality and co-creating the reality also around us together. And I believe some of the stuff that goes on is a big distraction from remembering who we really are.
Well, I think that I mean, we could get into, the socioeconomical, political problems with the world and all that kind of thing. And I think that there is a vested interest in certain powers to keep that knowledge kind of dampened down, because if you get too many people, you know, that are aware of their free will state, then it's not easy to get them to do what you want.
Right.
But anyway, that's just my opinion about things. But
Yeah, I totally agree.
now, So in the higher self would also be connected with you. I see in your writing you mentioned the inner healer. So is that a variation or another face of the higher self we're talking about? We talk about the inner healer.
Yeah, I'll say it's another variation of the higher self.
Yeah.
I think most of us don't realize how powerful we really are. And I do believe that a lot of what happens is created from the mind.
What happens to us in our life and around us. Oh
Yeah, let's
yeah.
say injuries and illnesses and things like this.
Uh,
Some of it, I think, if we created this, if this is a mind state and then it manifests into a physical thing, if we realize how powerful we really are and we have the ability to heal ourselves and we call in that inner healer, I do believe it's part of our soul essence to
right.
find healing.
To find healing. And it's somewhere inside of us, there's like a little lever controller guy, and there, a person or woman, right, who's in there like, pointing directions and pulling levers, and that's where we end up, sort of,
Yep.
right? And we may or may not be aware of what they're doing in there. So, uh, and that if we are, we could be in touch with the inner healer. Okay, so this is, I mean, I've said this a couple of times to other people that at some point in my life, I became starkly aware that I just estimating that 90% of my own personal experience is actually what I think.
Yes.
And that, I mean, so the idea that hit me like a ton of bricks, and then the reality of that has taken me like many years to absorb just how true that is. I mean, there are things that happen to me that are out of my control, but nearly everything that I experience is something I'm generating, and and I think that what you're talking about, getting in touch with your true self, the higher self, the inner healer, that we're able to sort of like correct those those unconscious intentions that we carry around, and
Yep.
and sail a little smoother, maybe, right? Now, also too, I want to ask about there's is the transpersonal therapy. What does transpersonal mean? What is that about?
Yeah, it ties right into the higher self. It's the belief that there is more to than just this physical body. That there's an energy, a universal consciousness, guides, angels, whatever you want to call it, that we can look to for assistance, guidance, and help. We have to remember to ask. Most people don't know that they can ask.
Oh, that's the important part. So it's like it's like you have all these things available, but it's a free will thing. You have to exercise your free will and ask for it.
Yeah.
Ah, so I think a lot of us, I've had this feeling like, growing up, it's like, I just want somebody to take care of me. I just want somebody to like, to just pick me up off the street and say, here, have this great job, and here's your house, and here's your great life, and and I'll say thank you very much. I'll do very good at it, but it doesn't work that way, does it? I mean, we're the ones that have to make that happen. I mean, I've learned the hard way, but
Well, what
go
would
ahead.
you learn from that if it was so easy, though?
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, it's a childish desire, I think. I mean, when I think
Yeah,
about it, but it's something that's kind of a common wish. Like, oh, I don't really want to do all this.
absolutely. I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier about one of the first things that you do with clients is you connect them with their higher self. But you mentioned guides. Let's talk a little bit about what are guides.
Yeah, spirit guides. So the idea is that we have one spirit guide that is probably traveled with us through many lifetimes, is with us through our entire lifetime. And it's our main guide that we can look to for assistance, guidance, connect with on a spiritual level. Um, and then we have other guides that might pop in for a specific purpose of something that maybe we're going through, like right now in our life, that maybe we were having a tough time. Let's say you're starting a new business and you need help, like so maybe that guide steps in to help you support you in accomplishing this important thing. And what's really interesting about guides, they're different than angels. Guides have actually been on an incarnation before.
Oh, so they're like us in a way.
Pardon?
So they're like us in a way. I mean, like having
Had a
had
human
similar.
experience, and
Yes.
so they can have a little bit more of an understanding of what it is that we're dealing with as far as the density here. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So, a guide, and this is another person. I mean, this isn't the higher self, which is like a part of us or our true self. This is what you're talking about, transpersonal. This is like beyond me, and so that
Yeah.
and I think that me personally, I think that that's the crux in my philosophy experience of any kind of spiritual awareness or growth is this recognizing an otherness outside of me. That is okay. And the reason I bring this up, and I is that I understand that the way we biologically work is that everything that we perceive, all the smells, everything that we see, all the touch, I mean, the wind blowing, all of that is a model in our brain that we're not, so we may or may not know what is actually going on around us, but we know what model the brain is making out of the sensory input, right? And so,
Yeah.
okay, now when we grow spiritually or we get into this what you're talking about connecting with guides, it's something that sparks a different perception that we're able to get outside of the brain model.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, okay, what do you think about that idea?
I love that idea. 100% agree. And it's like there's another viewpoint
Yeah, right.
besides just from this egoic mind projection, right? From our brain. There's actually a great book called Don't Believe Everything You Think.
Okay.
And it's about how thinking causes suffering.
Oh yeah, I can attest to that.
It's a great book. And I do believe that most of our experience is a projection from our mind. And guess what? When we do some work on ourselves, we do some spiritual growth, we start looking through things, I'll call it through more of rose-colored glasses, our view of the world changes.
It really does. I I actually did an experiment with expectations. And so I'm walking on a path, there's lots, strangers are coming in the other direction or whatever. And so then I see a group coming, and then my initial apprehension is like, oh, I think these people are kind of, rough or whatever, or they might be drunk or something. I don't know. And then what I do is I tell myself, no, I'm going to imagine that they're really nice, uh, friendly people, and they're going to say hi. And so, like, I fix this idea in my head and like switch that expectation. And sure enough, it's like they're really nice people. But I mean, that may seem like a really like a simplistic thing, but using that, I mean, this just occurred to me to start doing, right? So adjusting my expectations seemed to change outcomes.
Yes, I completely agree. And and there's also the saying like, oh, we can't control everything that's going on around us, but we can control our reaction to it or our perception of it.
Oh, yes, yes, that's a big one. That's a huge one because, and I'm okay. I don't want to say how old I am, but I'm old enough to know better. But I'm still learning so much, and that's a big one for me, um, because like if somebody says something, I say, "Oh, that was really rude," and then okay, I'm getting to the mind now. It's like, oh, they must have had a reason for saying that. Why call it rude? That's me making myself upset. You know.
Yeah, yes.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, totally.
yeah. So maybe they're having a hard day, or maybe I am offending them. I don't know, but or maybe they have a sensitivity I don't understand. But the point is that by me in justifying, oh my God, we spend. I do. I mean, I spent so much of my life justifying my negative thoughts. Like, oh, that was so terrible. That person was so terrible. And it's like, oh, here's why. I could give you like 100 reasons, but all of that is coming out of my head, like what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
And I can change that. Yeah. So, um, I'm going to put you on the spot, but other things that you do with your work or you're thinking about, or you like got, projects ahead, anything you would like to talk about that I haven't asked you?
Well, a past life regression is the whole reason I got into this work, but there's a whole collection of other things that can happen spiritually in the hypnotic spaces, like also future life incarnations. I mentioned the non-human incarnations, um, sole purpose for planning this life, soul retrieval. Oh, the one thing I'm really into right now is quantum jumping.
Quantum jumping. What
Yes.
what is that?
That is the idea that there are many possibilities available to us, and if we can, so let's say there's five different possibilities of the life that Susan Lyons could be living. And if Susan Lyons can raise her vibration to this other place, it will attract a different kind of life, or manifesting some different things in our life. So quantum jumping would be like, if I, in a fluffy term, if I jumped into a parallel reality, right? But maybe it is just simply as simple as being able to visualize the things that I want, desire, and that I came as a purpose in this lifetime for, and then getting my vibration to match that. And it's a beautiful and interesting and really fun and creative process. And we can visualize, and it's not just visualizing the life I want, but how does that make me feel on an emotional level?
Mm-hmm.
The emotion is kind of the thing we're after, because the subconscious mind's like, oh, that feels so good. Let me orchestrate the steps to getting her to that place.
Oh, yeah, right. Because that feels like adventure,
Yeah,
So
it's a
I'm going to be nerdy for a second. And so, quantum jumping in quantum mechanics means a sudden jump in an energy state, from one energy state to another. It's like not a gradual, but like flipping a switch to go from one to the other. And so what you're talking about is like if your life purpose appears to be like on a level or something you're attracted to, it seems far away, that you can attune yourself to an energy level and then jump there
yeah.
and then make that your plane of operation. I like that. See, I like that so much more than, well, all this, science fiction stories about, parallel universes and stuff like that. That makes more sense and it's more relatable to me, and something useful. Quantum jumping. Okay. So go
it
ahead.
kind of it kind of comes in alignment with another like future life or skill rehearsal that we do. Those are other hypnotic techniques where we are actually creating that a future and that vibration, and it's almost like then we flip the switch,
You're
right?
you're
And we
creating you're creating that future.
exactly.
Now, okay, so future life. So talk about that. So that sounds like, are you connecting with something that's, because I believe that all time is now, right? Are you connecting with something that's existing in the future, or are you creating a future from now, or does it matter? Which is it the same thing?
There's a future in this current lifetime. Like, what is my life going to look like in 5 years?
Right. Right.
What, and we can even try that on for size, like by creating it and imagining it in a hypnotic state, and then working out any problems. Or maybe we get to that place and be like, oh, that is associated with a bunch of other yucky stuff that's going to happen. Maybe I don't want that, right? So there's current life. We can try that on for size. And then there's also actually going to a future lifetime, because like you said, in quantum physics, everything is happening now.
Right.
And so and this was actually discovered by a past life hypnotherapist who used the words go to the event that created this condition. He didn't say go to a past life. He said go to the event that created this condition, and so the person went to the future.
Okay, that's a little mind bending. So
It's very much.
how the future can affect the past. So I know that there's stories about that. Or how, okay, more to the point, how we in the present can affect the past because we're future to the past, right? So we can, so does it work both ways?
Yes. And when we heal, we have this saying, when we heal the present, we heal the past and the future.
Wow. So I studied with some Andean mystics, and one of the exercises in their training was to go through the memories of our entire life, everything we can remember, but start at the beginning and try to be as thorough as possible. But the point of the exercise was to, when you get to the points like traumatic experiences or things that were really difficult, you draw what they call the heavy energy out of it. Yeah, and so that you go through, and you're not just changing your memory, they say, you're healing that point and changing your life path by doing that. So is this kind of what you're talking about?
Yes. Oh God, that sounds just beautiful. Yes, definitely. Again, it's like we're reframing the energy around it.
Yeah, right, exactly, exactly.
It reframes our perception of it, our effect, the effect that it has on us.
Right. And the perception that we have of ourselves. Uh,
Yes.
because I know that me, I end up, creating an identity based on my past, or what I call my past, or what I call my history. It's like, oh, I did this, that, and the other thing. I mean, it's like we do that. It's kind of a habit of our culture, whatever. But if we can change those memories or change what we believe happened to us, then we're changing ourselves in the process doing that.
Yeah. And I also believe it helps us get unstuck from that victim mode, that life is happening to me. Actually, life is happening for me.
Ah, yes. Big, 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 big difference. Yes. So what else? You mentioned. Okay, yeah. What else did you mention there? Things that you're working on.
Well, that's what I'm right now working on. I do have a monthly past life group that meets. Anybody can come to this. And what's great about this is it's hosted through HCH Institute, and you can find the information there. And it's been going for 8 years now, once a month, with a different intention every month. And it's a group of anywhere from 10 to 20 people show up online, and there's a discussion about the topic, and then a group regression
Oh, all
and
together.
afterwards.
Oh, and then a discussion afterwards.
People share their stories if they're comfortable afterwards. And it's really great to hear the stories because it also validates everybody else's story that, oh, I'm not just making this up. This makes sense.
Wow. I might try this. I mean, I said at the beginning, I've been skeptical about the past lives, but I know that this is a real experience for people, and so it's, yeah, definitely piqued my curiosity to check this out to see, I mean, I don't know what in particular it would pertain to me, but then you don't know, do you? Sometimes until you look at it, right?
Correct. Oftentimes, people will say, in the one-on-ones are different. Also, from just to say this little note, different from the groups, because the group, it's just me speaking and everybody's having their own experience. The one-on-ones are more personal to what the question they're coming with. Um, but oftentimes, people will say, "Oh my God, that is not what I expected." And that tells me something important, that the egoic, the controlling part of our mind was not in charge of the storyline.
Uh-huh.
So they got out of their thinking and they were just having an experience.
This is fascinating, and like we said in the beginning, regardless of what the source is, this is absolutely deepening people's understanding of life, of themselves, and I'm understanding expanding their awareness of just who we are. Wow,
Exactly.
wow.
Discover your true self.
There it is. There it is. Well,
That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to remember why I chose this lifetime. And I know I came here to do something important. And I think right now, for everybody, this kind of work is really important with the shift in consciousness that's going on. I do believe there's a shift in consciousness to a higher vibration going on the planet. And it's a beautiful time to be curious, right?
beautiful time. If you're able to make that quantum jump and get and get into that higher vibration that you're talking about, and be there. It's a great time to be alive. But there's a lot of, yeah, there, what is it? I just want to say, like, there's piranhas in the water, so we got to be careful. So,
Yes.
oh, well, Susan,
It's
go ahead.
more important that we have our own mind.
Our own mind. That's
Our
it.
own, yes, our own mind,
Our
right?
our true self, our own mind. Have that, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
Susan, I've loved this conversation today. This has been, I mean, really, really, it's been amazing. It's been great talking with you. I've learned so much today, things I didn't expect, and so that's wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. And I want to just say, if anybody that does want to contact me, that discover your true self, .com, it's discover your and then a TRU with no E.
Okay, no E.
Yes.
Self.com. And I'm going to put that link in the program notes. So if somebody just, when they're listening to the podcast, they can just click right on it if they want to go to your website. That's
Fantastic.
beautiful. Okay. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been just a wonderful conversation.
Same here. And that is all for this episode of Audible River. Wherever you are on this wonderful planet, we would love to know what you think about our podcast. So please leave a comment or email us at audibleriverpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.